Okay, so you telling me that you got such a big problem with Protestantism and you're cozying up to a Muslim who produces corn?
Mm.
That doesn't make any sense. I mean, just from a standpoint of even if she's got a problem with Protestantism, we are certainly much closer to her convictions than Andrew Tate.
Man, that's
Yeah.
excellently stated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is for me, this is how I know that she's not doing this out of principle. And the same thing is true about Kanye. Kanye Kanye has produced some of the most vile and blasphemous content in the last few years that I can think of. Nothing has been more offensive to a supposed Christian than some of the things Kanye is doing or said. But what has she said about Kanye? If we're going on the principle that, well, she doesn't want to say anything to him because that's her friend. I'm saying, well, don't we read in the scriptures where Jesus said, "Who is my mother, my brother, my sister, except those that do the will of my Father?"
Yeah.
You can't put your family and your familial or your friendship relationships above the truth. And so when I started to look at those contradictions, this is how I knew that she is not saying these things out of principle, because if she was, she would be having that same energy and same smoke for Andrew Tate and Kanye, and she doesn't. So now I'm saying, okay, so then what's her motivation? What's her MO?
So like, what really happened to Candace Owens? Like, why has she become the sworn enemy of Protestants, and people just want to love her? Like, they just literally, many of them want to love her, and she just will have none of it unless they become Catholic. We are going to have a conversation about that today. This is Culture Proof.
Every single stronghold, we pull them down. Yeah.
Thanks for checking out Culture Proof. I'm Miki.
And I'm Will.
And today we are talking about sort of like the tragic backstory of Candace Owens. There's been so much response to us talking about Candace attacking Protestants, and more people are seeing it. We've read so many of your comments where you're saying, "Hey, I started feeling this, I started seeing this," and so glad that people are finally speaking out. Finally had to stop listening, refuse to continue getting like beaten up every time I'm going to check out her podcast. And then a friend of ours, a brother in the Lord, data scientist and podcaster,
Getter of buckets.
I was gonna say, that normally you would say things like our co-laborer, but I feel like he's a co-getter of buckets. Like, I don't know.
Well,
That's not in the Bible. That's not Bible. But Todd Shannon is going to join us just because he did an incredible podcast that I think a lot of people need to see, where he talks about the decline of Candace Owens. And really, to talk about the decline of Candace Owens, you have to talk about like the meteoric rise of Candace Owens that was without foundation. And then if you talk about that, then you can understand the steep decline and also the belligerence that has kind of characterized the way she engages. And so Todd did an incredible job over on his podcast. Todd thinks you should go check that out. And so we're going to talk about that. But first, before we get into the thick of it, we want to say a huge thank you to the premier sponsors of the Culture Proof podcast. That's bjupresshomeschool.com. You know that we are huge advocates of educating, training, and discipling your kids at home. That is what we do. We look at what's going on in this world. And let me tell you something. An hour a week, maybe 2 hours in a week is not enough to combat the dark forces that's trying to surround our children.
Yeah.
We really need to be actively involved in the discipling, in the training, and the equipping of our kids. And we do that under the guise of education. The aim is to make disciples of the Lord Jesus Christ. If that's what's important to you, and I don't know why it wouldn't be, check out our friends over at bjupresshomeschool.com/culture-proof. When you follow that link, it'll be your way of letting them know that the Addisons sent you. All right, let's get to the reason that you guys have all joined us today to answer the question, what happened to Candace? And this is the question that our brother, Todd Shannon, raised over on his podcast, Todd Thinks. and he had some receipts that he brought in. And I just thought, man, Todd did an excellent job,
Yes.
because the starting point is not necessarily to look at when she started bashing Protestants. The starting point, which you pointed out excellently, Todd, is that it was her rise within the conservative movement. It was that there was no real like grounding in like a deep belief of what she was like espousing. She just said the things that seemed to draw attention and people liked it. And so she said more of it. And then more people liked it and wanted her to say more of it. And I think a conservative was, quote unquote, I want to say born, but I think maybe it's just spawned. A conservative was spawned. Todd, help us understand this.
Yes, I think you captured it. First of all, thank you for having me on. First time on Culture Proof.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, I'm not gonna bash off. Taking too long. No, I love Will and Meek. We go way back. Just good people. So anyway, like you were saying, Candace spawned. I'm going to use that because spawned is it is kind of almost a sinister term. Makes you think like an arachnid or some other insect, or like Aliens if you saw that movie. Yes, she came out of nowhere, and I don't think people know Candace's when she kind of hit the apex of her popularity, obviously, and they kind of thought, well, this is who Candace always was, and that's not true at all. And most people don't know about her beginnings and how it really kind of spawned out of really just her kind of a combination of her being attacked and then her responding to being attacked, but not necessarily her having deep convictions about the things she was espousing. So I think that's kind of, if you watch kind of her rise, that's been her MO the entire time.
So how do you think that ultimately became destructive for her? Because where I see that she is now, and the reason I feel like genuine Bible believing Christians need to care is that I feel like she's almost kind of crashing out. Like she has gone down so many rabbit trails of information, and she just, because, and again, I think this kind of goes back to the way she came on the scene as a conservative. It's like people started like, we're always looking for a champion. We're always looking for the win. And so I think for her being Black and being a conservative at the time that she started having this like crisis of thinking, and she's like, okay, well, I don't fit neatly here because I have this feeling, but she didn't have all of the feelings that would, kind of characterize her as a conservative. I think the problem is that people just sort of catapulted her because of her ability to speak with authority on the thing that had captured her at the moment. And so I think that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing she's able to draw a crowd because of her interests, and whatever she is interested in, she takes almost as sort of like a law and a necessity that it. And she's able to speak so convincingly and so dogmatically that you think, wait, how have I not known this? It's almost sort of like she and her intelligence insults your intelligence. And I think now she's crashing out because, as she has always done, she goes down these like rabbit trails. And I think the rabbit trails, and I mean this respectfully, I think they're making her a little bit mad, like a little bit unhinged.
And let me ask this to just kind of tack on to that, because I know maybe some would say some of the things that she's looked into has been legitimate. So where is the point where it becomes like, okay, that's too far? Because I'm thinking about some of the research, some of the things that she's done, and it was like, man, that was actually on point.
Yeah,
it was right. But it seems like it's kind of going to a point where it's like it's becoming an obsession to find these things, and some of it seems way out in left field. So it's almost like people want to know, like, okay, but is she right about this? How do I know, when it's too far?
I think that's an excellent question. And I would love to hear what Todd thinks. You see what I did there? I would love to hear what Todd thinks about that. I will just say this, though. I think whenever the answer to all of the ails of the world is the Jews, I think that's just too much. I think when, and I think anybody who has like a legitimate concern about what's happening with Israel and with Gaza, I think anybody having a genuine concern almost they start to feel like, well, can I really say what I think? Because I don't want to sound like Candace. Like the problems of the world are not to be laid at the feet of the Jews. But Todd,
Wow.
what do you think in response to Will's question?
Yeah. So what I think is that, you know, I think that what she has learned what to do, she has learned how to capitalize on being heterodox.
Okay.
In a sense, she's always finding some contrary angle. So
Mm.
she learned early on, I think, that her ticket to her meteoric rise was, I am the black female conservative, right?
Yeah.
And at the time, that was something that wasn't very prevalent, and so she was kind of the unicorn in that space.
Mhm.
And it's that kind of impulse for the heterodox that she learned that really just saying the controversial thing or having the controversial take. And so because I think she really wants to be famous, I think she really likes the limelight. I don't think that she's saying these things out of principle. And she's shown that over and over again. For example, she's having all these conversations about bashing, for example, Protestants and all this stuff. And yet she's good friends with a Muslim who created, can I say the P word, the corn that rhymes with corn, Mr. Andrew Tate. Okay, so you telling me that you got such a big problem with Protestantism and you're cozying up to a Muslim who produces corn? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, just from a standpoint of, even if she's got a problem with Protestantism, we are certainly much closer to her convictions than Andrew Tate.
Man, that's
Yeah.
excellently stated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is how I know that she's not doing this out of principle. And the same thing is true about Kanye. Kanye Kanye has produced some of the most vile and blasphemous content in the last few years that I can think of. Nothing has been more offensive to a supposed Christian than some of the things Kanye is doing or said. But what has she said about Kanye? If we're going on the principle that, well, she doesn't want to say anything to him because that's her friend. I'm saying, well, don't we read in the scriptures where Jesus said, who is my mother, my brother, my sister, except those that do the will of my Father?
Yeah.
You can't put your family and your familial or your friendship relationships above the truth. And so when I started to look at those contradictions, this is how I knew that she is not saying these things out of principle, because if she was, she would be having that same energy and same smoke for Andrew Tate and Kanye, and she doesn't. So now I'm saying, okay, so then what's her motivation? What's her MO? And I think that she's just she has these different topics and these rabbit trails that she goes down and that she wants to capitalize on because they're controversial and she likes to fight. She has a kind of an unhealthy, she enjoys the brawl. I think that a good person, a brave person, we fight because we have to fight, but we don't want to fight. I got the smoke for you, but I don't want to do that.
Right.
I'd rather us live in peace, but she wants to fight. And I think that that's a kind of an unhealthy personality trait about her. So those are the things that I think about when I think about Candace Owens. She's obviously have had some good contributions to the cultural conversations and the social political conversations. So I don't want to take that away from her. Everything she says is not wrong, right? But she has obviously gone down, and that's why that's why I entitled the video that I did, her descent into madness.
Yeah.
That's an appropriate way to describe it.
Yeah, the thing that concerns me is that, especially like her pivot away from Protestantism, I feel like what happened with Candace was she came to faith through politics. Okay. So it's not like she discovered that the gospel is true. I'm a sinner. I need to repent. She discovered that a lot of her cohorts also happen to be Protestants. They happen to be Christian. A lot of them were Reformed. So she described herself at one point as a reformed Christian. And I was like, girl, you're
Stop it.
you're not. Which is why she invited Allie Beth Stuckey to debate her husband, George Farmer, because she's like kind of, grabbing at the people who were close to her, who were Protestants. She kind of got caught up in this American mixing of evangelicalism and political activism. And so she saw herself as sort of being like politically and spiritually born again, but not anchored in any real biblical conviction. And you see this, and you played this clip on your podcast. It is her sitting across from Dave Rubin, where he's trying to ask her about, her thoughts on the social issues. So here she is. She's got this gigantic rise, and she's the it girl in conservative politics, and she knows it. She's leaning into it. And then the questions, okay, so what about the social issues? Where are you on that? Well, what do you mean? She says, what do you mean specifically? Okay. So then he says, gay marriage, abortion. And she goes, oh, I'm totally for gay marriage. Yeah, I'm totally for gay marriage.
Something about that, when I saw that clip that Todd played, I remember the clip I saw recently of her talking to Don Lemon. And that came up again, and he asked her about her views, and she was like, "Oh, it's a sin."
Because someone corrected her,
right?
You see, so somebody got to her and changed that view. Same thing with abortion, because in that same clip that you play on your episode, where she's just like, "I'm not sure how I feel about abortion," because I know a lot of people who've been affected by, so I'm not sure how. And again, somebody got to her. And so then she realizes, oh, to be in this space, okay, I have to be staunchly pro-life. Got it. Gonna change it for later. And then, oh, I have to be pro-traditional marriage. Got it. Because she's a quick study. Candace Owens is a quick study. She is very much people smart. And so then she changed those views. The problem that I have, and I want to go back to you on this, Todd, the problem that I have is that for the conservatives who surrounded her, that was enough. It was almost sort of like, no, we can fix all that later. She's good on camera. She's a bulldog on the issues that we feed her. So let's just keep her going in that space.
Exactly. I think that your comment about her being a quick study, I think is an appropriate one, because I think she absorbed information quickly. And also she was an effective debater, right? So that made her good on camera. It made her good in these viral moments. And I think just like almost like memorizing other people's lines and kind of regurgitating them quickly. But I don't think they came from a place of deep conviction, because she just didn't have enough time for those principles to really, I guess, seep into her bones, in a sense. Where she everything moved so quickly for her that immediately she became famous because she was the Black conservative girl. And as she's going, she certainly isn't going to jeopardize her meteoric rise by saying something that would put her in ill favor. So I think maybe a lot of this stuff was a placeholder, and then she ended up like, oh, wait a minute. I don't know if I really believe that. And I think, you know what else it reminds me of? It reminds me of what the Bible talks about, where it talks about the dangers of putting a novice into leadership.
Yes.
Right. I think that, there again, you alluded to it early in the conversation, where in Christian conservative circles or whatever, we're so thirsty to get our champion. Right. And the same thing is with Kanye. Everybody was like, oh, Kanye, we finally got one. Kanye, yeah, the superstar. He's on our side now. Now Jesus is going to be cool. And, and it's like, well, no. And I, for one, honestly, Kanye almost had me fooled. I'll keep it a buck, because he was really saying all the right things. Right. But it's another example of why you have to watch people when they all of a sudden have these new ideas, and you gotta, we'll see. You don't want to be skeptical of people in general, but you also have to have a certain amount of caution about, new converts. And I know that there again, we're talking about, we're kind of mixing these concepts of conservatism and Christianity, because they are so close. And I think that also is something that we need to talk about more, because I think some people think that becoming a Christian is like becoming a conservative. where
Come on, come on.
Yep.
you have these set of propositions that you agree with. Therefore, you are a conservative. And it's like, oh, well, that's the same thing as being a Christian. I agree with these moral principles. Therefore, I'm a Christian. No, you are not. No, you are not a Christian.
So
And
good.
this is an odd thing, too, because honestly, that knife cuts both ways, because there are
Mhm.
some people who I could probably say are genuinely born again, and I don't understand where their values or convictions come from, because they don't have anything to do with the Bible.
Mm.
They
That's
need discipleship.
right. So it's like a weird
Yes.
thing. So it's like some people who literally have the wrong political and cultural ideas, and they actually are probably genuinely in the faith. I say probably, I have to give that caveat. And then you have people with all the right political and social positions, and they don't know Jesus. This
Mm.
this confuses people. And I think that we do have to understand that our ideas about politics and culture should be derivative. It should be downstream of our spiritual views, but oftentimes it happens for some people in the reverse. So we just have to be aware of that. So I think there's a lot to be said about those things with respect to Candace, because she just came up so quickly. And that's why I've always kind of been skeptical of her. I'll be honest with you. I've always kind of been skeptical of Candace. I really have.
Mhm.
Even when she and I'll say this another thing, and I don't know why. I don't know. I think it's probably just my wife's got some pretty good discernment or something. But my wife's never been into Candace, and I honestly didn't even really understand why. I'm just like, why you don't like Candace? she, I, you know, she talks right. She's like, I can't. She's like, I just can't with Candace. I
Mhm.
don't know if it's a personality thing, but when Candace started to go down this road, she's kind of like, I told you. You're right, babe. It must have been the anointment.
No, I'm not trying to force fall, but I did pull out my flannels because I do feel like a little breeze in the air.
Oh yeah.
It's time. I see you've got the crew neck on.
Yeah.
It's time. You
About to
know
be
what it's
hoodie
also
season,
time?
too.
It's about to be hoodie season. You know what it's also time for? It's time for sniffles.
Oh.
It's time for decreased vitamin D. It's
Oh.
time for people to be shaking your hand and you don't know where it's been. Let me just tell you, you need your supplements, okay? You need to get your body built up and get ready to face the fall and the
Mhm.
winter, where the dreaded reduction of vitamin D
Oh,
takes
man.
place. You're not out in the sun like you used to be. You need to make sure that your body is ready for what is coming.
Mm.
Check out our friends at We Heart Nutrition. We've got third-party tested supplements that work. Y'all, we are so geeked up about We Heart Nutrition. This is what we take to stay on top of balancing our body. You can do the very same thing. You will not be disappointed. You need to check them out. That's weheartnutrition.com. weheartnutrition.com. Use the promo code CultureProof and save 20% today. That's promo code CultureProof at weheartnutrition.com. And as always, 10% of everything that goes into this company, where these people love and fear the Lord,
Mm.
10% of what goes in comes right back out to help crisis pregnancy care centers all across this country. They celebrated 2 years, and in 2 years, they've given over $400,000
That's
to
awesome.
crisis pregnancy care centers all across the country. You can be a part of it, doing the most for your body and also little bodies that you may never meet. Check them out today. That's weheartnutrition.com.
Yeah.
Listen, no, I'm telling you, I think there's something
Uh.
there. And I think your wife's not alone in that. I will say, I started listening to Candace when she left the Daily Wire, which is really interesting. And
Mhm.
part of that was out of curiosity, because I was like,
Mhm.
wait, what happened? You know, we were in radio for a long time, Todd. And so
Right.
in radio, it was sort of like we had our own movement bubble. Like we, you know,
Right,
our organization, we are doing things. So I would catch wind of like comments coming from Candace Owens, but she wasn't really on my radar. Like I wasn't listening to her
Mhm.
because we were in our own space, kind of doing our own thing, right?
Mhm.
But it
Mhm.
was not until we started podcasting, and also she left she was fired from the
Mhm.
Daily Wire,
Mhm.
that I was like, wait a minute, what did I miss? Like, what is going on? So I started listening to her podcast on a regular basis. And I was like, man, this is really interesting information that's
Mhm.
coming
Mhm.
out from her. So, and early on, and I'm just going to be 100% transparent. Early on, listening, I was like, okay, I'm going to get the book Chaos. I'm kind of curious about that. I start reading the book Chaos. I finished the book Chaos, and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. And the reporters got receipts. And so I'm like, whoa, okay, what else is it that I may have been uninformed about or underinformed about.
Mhm.
And then I keep listening to her and I'm like, okay, this Kamala Harris thing, that's really interesting. Like she's
Yeah.
doing the whole family lineage and everything. And Kamala's team is not coming out and saying, Candace, girl, stop that. You're wrong. I am a black woman. They're just kind of like, they can't refute it. So I'm like, wait a minute. Did she actually stumble upon something? Then you've got the Brigitte Macron thing, and she's bringing in the reporters from France and all of the research. And I'm like, wait a minute. All of it sounds very believable. But the thing about it is, as I'm listening, I'm going, wait a minute. Girl sounds like she hates Jews, though.
Yeah.
Like I'm going, wait, hold up a second. Bibi Netanyahu is like stuck in her teeth. Like, what is going on with her?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, so then I start to feel convicted listening to her. I'm just going to be 100%. I start feeling like, ooh, this isn't good. And then the thing that put it over the top was her having Dr. E. Michael Jones on. And between the two of them, they enjoy a moment where they call Protestants basically offshoots of Satan worshipers. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
open the door at the next stop. I'm getting off, you know? And so I feel like a lot of people being captivated by Candace is because she does present a lot of plausible information. Like it's like, wait a minute, that's wild. But then she brings in enough supporting facts, it seems like, that I think people are just sort of like, okay, man, I believe this, you know? And so I think what is required is people to be able to say, how much of that am I willing to listen to while being constantly offended in the other areas?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will just a couple of things. One thing is that I kind of got off the Candace Owens. There again, I was never against Candace, but I was never like a huge fan. I think, and to be frank, Candace, her audience would naturally skew towards the ladies, right? I mean, so
Sure.
I think that's probably more so the reason why I didn't get into Candace, is because she's kind of for the ladies, right? That's her audience. But I started to get off the Kansas bandwagon when the Jew thing to me was evident, like really early on. That was before she left the Daily Wire, and there was an interview that she did with this guy who's supposed to be a Jew, and he's one of the most staunchest like anti-Israel, anti-Zionist people that I've ever seen. And I listened to this interview, and I wanted to. There was some Jewish people, honestly, that were attacking her like unfairly, and I was like, okay, she's got a point there. These people are coming after her, and they're kind of smearing her. But then, as I listened to one interview where there's the moral question of how should Israel defend itself, and then this one guy, he goes on this like 15-minute rant about how the Jews are committing genocide and blah, blah, blah. And she sat there and she didn't say a word. She just let him say all of these things, most of which were not true. And at that point I said, something's not right about this girl. Something's not right about her, because this guy, I have never seen Candace quiet ever in my life. You ever watch Candace?
Right.
Maybe you get a couple minutes in, and then she would at least throw in like a devil's advocate type thing. Well, some people might say that this is, the situation. And to me, it felt like she was letting him say all the things she wanted to say, but that she couldn't say because she was with the Daily Wire. And I said, I don't respect that. I didn't respect it, because I'm saying you're supposed to be big bad Candace. You take on everyone. If that's how you think, then say it yourself. Don't bring somebody on to parrot things that you believe and you're scared to say them. You can say, you'd be like, plausible deniability. Well, I didn't say it. He said it. He's just on my, like Tucker Carlson, I'm just asking questions. That sort of thing. So I didn't really respect that. So at that point, I kind of was just like, no, I can't deal with Candace. But with respect to the interesting, observations we obviously been making about Catholicism, I mentioned this in the video that you referenced, but the one I jumped off when I jumped off the bandwagon was she said her husband George is his name, right?
George,
Farmer,
that's right.
asked her a question, and she said, "This question's been." Do you have that clip?
Let me play the clip.
I think
Let
we
me
have
play
that.
because we actually have this from your podcast episode where you then kind of react to it. Can I play it?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, let me play it. Here we go.
Questions have gotten interesting because my husband planted a seed in my head that won't go away. And I would not yet describe me as being in a place where that seed has fully bloomed. But it is a question that I am struggling with as somebody with Protestant beliefs. And what he essentially said to me, he was also formerly Protestant and now he's a Catholic, was, do I believe that in the 1500 years following Jesus Christ, leading up to Martin Luther stapling his theses, that nobody went to heaven? So essentially, Jesus saved us, and then for about 1500 years, nobody went to heaven until Martin Luther stapled his theses and corrected things. I don't believe that. I struggle with that question, and it has been something that I have been sitting with for a very long time, of course, because that would almost imply in my mind that Martin Luther is the savior and not Jesus.
Okay, so this is so fascinating because I have, in all of my years, so I'm 46 years old. I became a Christ follower when I was 17. I have never heard anyone who is not Catholic utter such ridiculous nonsense in my life.
Okay, so go ahead and unpack that. Why did her comment about this question that she got from George Farmer, why did that bother you so much and seemingly not hold water? Like, if that's going to be the thing, like kind of like the seminal event or question that you feel like now I'm converting.
Because it told me that she didn't know the first thing about the gospel.
Yeah.
Or the first thing or anything at all about church history.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she's out here opining on things that she does not understand. This is something I have to tell you is the ultimate pet peeve of mine. I want to make this popular. I want to make this like a mantra amongst thinking people everywhere. Just, it's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do not have strong opinions about things you don't understand. It's okay.
That's so good.
I want to make that popular. When I don't know a lot about something, I will say, you know what? I need to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
But here Candace is out here going on the Catholic crusade. And 5 minutes ago, she was beguiled by such a sophomoric and insane question that any person who's been saved for like 5 minutes would know, no, nobody thinks that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Nobody thinks that the first 1500 years of church history, nobody was saved.
Come on.
It's insane. And so that to me, and I honestly, I look for things like that as course filters. You know, I read a book one time called Keystone Habits. And it's an interesting book because what it shows is that there are certain habits that are like keystones to breaking other habits. Like you break them, and then once you break those, then all of the other things can kind of fall into place. But I also think that there's a principle that applies there with ideas and concepts. And there are keystone like thinking patterns, keystone ideas that I use. And oftentimes I don't know, I can't say that I'm never wrong on them, but my instincts on them are often correct. That when there's certain things, when people get them wrong, I immediately start to distrust them. And I use them as course filters. And the thing about Israel is one of them. Right?
That's good.
Just think about it. Just think about this. I just want everybody to think about this for a moment. What are the odds that the radical left in this nation, they are wrong about everything, right? They're wrong about everything. They're wrong about family. They're wrong about human nature. They're wrong about crime. They're wrong about economics. They're wrong about sexuality. They're wrong about their treatment of epidemics. They're just wrong. They're wrong about climate change. But they happen to get it right about Israel.
Come on.
They got that part right. It's like, wait, so Candace, she doesn't, and it as a thinking person, it amazes me that Candace has now started to ingest the, Queers for Palestine ideology.
Wow.
I mean, there's not if you go and look at some blue-haired, completely, I mean, and I don't want to use too much pejorative language, right? But you know what I'm talking about, right? These people whose brains, their mind is completely malformed. These people, their worldview completely has them to where they can't reach meaningful conclusions about anything important. This is why they're out here talking about Queers for Palestine. They don't even understand that that's a contradiction in terms. And her opinions about Israel are in lockstep with such a person. That to me is what we call a red flag.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just what we call a red flag. And so I do think that there's some of these ideas that can function as a course filter, and somebody who gets it so wrong. I'm not saying that I'm not saying you have to be like Bibi Netanyahu is the best thing since sliced bread and everything Israel does is right. I'm not saying that. But the principal moral issue about the Israel and Palestine conflict is not difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It really is not. And the bottom line is that you have a people who do not want their own sovereign state as they have been offered it no fewer than 5 times. They say no. They said no all 5 times, and then they responded with violence. So you can give me all of this history about supposed Israel genocide and yada, 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 and all of this nonsense. But at the root, that's why that conflict persists. And to me, that's not a difficult one to discern. There again, it's not that Israel, everything they do is right. It's not that they haven't done some shady stuff. I believe all of those things are true. But those things that they do that might be out of bounds are not the reason why that conflict persists. And so I say that to say, Candace is 0 for 2 of my course filters.
About one of our sponsors, Accountable to You.
Jesus is Lord. In public and in private, every area of our life must be subject to his lordship,
including our use of technology. What captures our attention on the screen either glorifies or dishonors the Lord. That's why Accountable to You is committed to promoting biblical accountability in families and churches.
Their monitoring and reporting software makes transparency easy on all your devices, so you can say with the psalmist, I would not set anything worthless before my eyes.
Guard against temptation with Accountable to You and live for God's glory. You can try it free today at accountable2you.com/cultureproof. That's accountable, the number 2, YOU.com/cultureproof. We've already signed up, protecting our family, and we invite you to do the same. Visit them, accountable2you.com/cultureproof. No, that's good. That's really good.
Oh.
I don't know what just happened there. Did you do that? That's you, Todd.
I have a thing on my it almost never happens, but I have this like
the reactions.
Gestures. It recognizes gestures, and then I had the 2 fingers up, so maybe it thought I was. Anyway, that's
agreed.
So
it agreed. But even on that point about Catholicism and her move towards that, I think she kind of was going for when she had that debate between her husband and Allie Stuckey. I think she was trying to say, well, I don't know much about my faith, so I'm gonna get Allie Bet.
Yes.
I know she reads the Bible and she to debate my husband. So I think that was her way of saying, well, I really don't know. So I'm going to get somebody. But it also showed how easy it was for the views of her husband in Catholicism to really bring her over. I think it wasn't, because I don't know if she really searched out her faith before that.
Yes. Why was she calling herself a Protestant in the first place? Why was she calling herself an evangelical Christian, which, she will now say Judeo-Christian, which is just a way for her to sort of like mock, you know what I'm saying, evangelicals. because she also wants to mock and show open hatred for Jews. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And people can say, well, she doesn't hate Jews. And the only defense that they will give is that she said she doesn't hate Jews. But everything else that she says and everything else that comes from her seems to point to that. And I want to kind of go back to the shift that happened in her most dogmatically, I think it was her conversion to her particular type of Catholicism that it seems to run and it seems to go tandem with a hatred for Jewish people. And
Absolutely.
that is the thing that has sort of like been a mystery to me, that I think I would imagine that more people would be able to see that. Like, okay, as soon as she gets deeper and deeper into her newfound Catholic faith, she is moving farther and farther away from like the Jewish man who gave her a job, and then the Jewish man who gave her a job before that. Like, I mean, it's amazing to me that she just can't remember, those things. And to me, it just shows, it kind of goes back to where we started. There's something about her being good at latching on to an idea or a concept that convinces people around her that she feels it deeply. But I don't think it's felt deeply. I think it's felt just enough. Go ahead, Todd.
She's good at amplifying a concept, but she doesn't understand them. So if you think about this, I mentioned this in the other video as well. I thought that this was a fascinating aspect. And this is one of the most bizarre and to me the most telling things about my whole deep dive into Candace. Her and her husband like met and talked on the phone for a couple weeks and got engaged.
Yeah.
And now listen, as a person I met my wife in New York City, 22 years ago, whenever that was. And 6 months later, I asked her to marry me. And 6 months after that, we were married. And we never lived in the same city. So I say that to say, I'm not a person who thinks you have to have this long, protracted, romance. But 2 weeks after talking on the phone, that's quick by any standard.
Yeah, I agree.
And she didn't know anything about his faith, obviously. This is what I found so bizarre. She was like, well, I'm Catholic, my husband is Catholic, and I'm Protestant. It's like, Dad didn't talk about that before I got married?
Right.
That's pretty big, right?
See, this is what premarital counseling will do for you.
Right, but it speaks to her judgment.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I found so fascinating about it. I said, you jumped on that. You jumped to marry this man, and he had this faith. And I kind of personally think that much of Candace's talking points, I think that the mastermind behind her Jew hate, I think is her husband.
Listen, let me just say, I agree with you. I hold up, and please don't forget your train of thought. But I don't want to let my silence be like I'm not willing to get in the fray of that.
Sure.
I believe that. I really do. And in fact, we've got some more clips that we want to play, and we want to have a conversation around it, because I think it's important for evangelical Christians to really understand what Candace feels about us. And I think that is coming from her husband. And look, and we have enough scripture to understand that by right it would come from him, because he has assumed the role as the leader and the head of that family. So there was just no way that she was going to maintain this Allie Beth Stuckey position, because it wasn't hers, but the Allie Beth Stuckey position, and her husband is over here with his particular brand of Catholicism. She has adopted his thoughts and is attempting to normalize those thoughts in her own life, and then by extension to all of her listeners. Can I play this clip, Todd, real quick? Okay, let me play this clip. This is about 11 months ago. Candace Owens is speaking to a Catholic group, and she is telling her story, telling sort of like the Candace story, right? And I watched the entirety of it. I pulled a few clips from it, but the thing that was interesting to me is how she describes herself as a Protestant. And I want people to hear how condescendingly she describes Protestantism, like for this audience. Because I think it's a revelation of her heart, and the fact that she doesn't have any mooring. There's nothing to anchor that you wouldn't mock people that you just 2 seconds ago affiliated with. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
All right, so here we go. We'll play the clip.
And free markets. We have to defend capitalism. And then I started working with Turning Point USA, and I hit the ground running. And suddenly, I'm running around with so many evangelical Christians that are in the political space as well. And I'm going, yes, and this feels good because I've been missing this faith part, this component of faith that I walked away from. And suddenly I'm going back to church again. And this is great, and it's amazing. And there's singing, and there's like concerts. It feels like a Justin Bieber concert. This is great. This is awesome. Who wouldn't want this? We need to spread the good word. And I get to talk about my faith journey on stage to college students and make them aware that the truth, the real truth, is that they just don't want us to have free markets. And if we don't have free markets, then we're all just going to be enslaved.
Now, I don't want to grab all of the response. So let me yield to you, gentlemen. Okay. Your thoughts on that. I have so many thoughts about that, but Todd, we'll go to you.
I felt a little bit of the shade.
She's going to concerts.
Yes, this is a common refrain of Catholics. Their kind of framing of evangelical Christianity. It's just a rock concert with motivational speech. And I'm just like, first of all, when's the last time somebody from the Catholic Church produced a meaningful piece of art with respect to music? You got to go back to like Handel. Like stop it.
Todd, we're above this, Todd.
Don't tell us how to do it when you're not doing it. Okay, good.
We're above this, Todd.
I'm
No,
petty. I'm petty. I'm not doing that.
he's like, no, Mickey, you're above this. I'm not above this. Okay.
I kind of got a little bit of smoke, but go ahead.
Look, let me tell you. One of the things. So when I'm watching this, I'm sitting and I'm going, oh man, this is it. This is what I feel like I observed, and this is her articulating that. She went to work for Turning Point USA. And think about everything that we know about Charlie Kirk right now. Think about everything that's coming out, how central his faith was to him and how important that was to him. And so now what she's saying is, I start to work at Turning Point USA and faith becomes central. So before that, she's a conservative and she's got these staunchly conservative political views and they're using her in all of these spaces. Then she goes to TP USA and they're all about faith. So now she finds faith. And it's great. And now she's mocking it sideways, right? So what I'm saying is she doesn't have any deeply rooted convictions. And so it keeps shifting. Every time you look around, it keeps shifting. And so then what happens? She's going to these concerts. But then she's watching her husband. I want to play another clip because she continues on. She's watching her husband. And her husband's got like sincere faith. She's just, killing time going once a week. But let me tell you, that's a skill issue. That's because you don't really know the Lord. Right. So you're clocking in 1 hour a week because you don't really know the Lord. So I feel like there's a revelation in that I don't think she could even hear in herself. You understand? But I feel like Protestants who are listening to her need to be aware of this. Like this is the type of like vitriol I feel that is underpinning or running just sort of, it's the undercurrent of what she's spewing. Will the Great, what are your thoughts?
No, the same thing that you guys felt, her comment about, went to church to, a concert. Again, that's shade, and she's going to explain more as we get into this other clip, but you can tell that she's trying to almost in a sideways way, just say like what I was a part of that was Protestant wasn't really the real. It wasn't the real. My husband, man, he had all these, his office was transformed. Like he seemed like he was more serious and, he had this serious faith, but I was going to concerts, and sadly enough, I will say some of that she could be right about. I don't know what kind of church she was going to, but I've seen the concerts and we've talked about some of those things where it wasn't, even in those churches, it didn't seem like it was about God. It was about a performance. So that's another issue. But I think what she's doing here is painting a picture in front of all of these her fellow Catholics that this is what I was a part of, and we can make jokes about them because this is how it was. But then I got the real faith. I
Yeah.
got the, you know, my real beliefs.
So she continues. I'll play the next clip if you gentlemen are in agreement. I'll play the next clip and then we can kind of come out and have a little conversation around it as well.
Really the big truth. You know, this is kind of like the last 4 miles of the marathon and things are good. And then this being drawn more to the concept of family, and I'm recognizing that my husband, you know, I'm a Protestant, but he's a Catholic. And at this same time, he is just being drawn more and more and more into the church, and he's going to mass every day. Can you imagine? I'm going on Sundays to a nice concert. This guy's looking, he's got objects in his hand, his whole office has transformed. Like, what is going on with you, man? What's going on? And I was just curious, you know. It was more the mystery of the side of my husband that I didn't quite understand. What are you getting up so early for? To go to mass? You know, you just went there. You were just there. Just gotta go on Sunday, just check in, you know. And I'm starting to have these conversations with him, and I'm listening, but, you know, not really comprehending. And he says to me, I start prodding to him about his faith journey and trying to understand why he made the decision to convert into the Catholic faith when he was at university. You know, what he studied theology, he decided to convert, and I'm starting to really get into the story to see what's driving him. And he says something to me that now rings in my head. He said, you know, to become a student of history is to become a Catholic. Yeah, what was he saying? Like, I wasn't a student of history? I went to public school. I took history.
Okay, Todd, you go first. You get first response.
First of all, she didn't even say that right. What she was supposed to say, there again, a common refrain from classics, to be deep in church history is to be Catholic. Which is false. Because the history of God's people doesn't begin with Catholicism, which we
Come
will
on.
talk about here in a moment. But I think that this is, again, something where someone like Candace, who, and there again, I have to respect this. There's something about this that I respect. She reveres her husband as she should.
Yeah.
Right? But this is why you got to marry the right guy.
Right.
Because as a woman, you're going to be drawn into the leadership that your husband provides, and that's a thing that fits naturally for women, or most women, that they want to go into that sphere, and there again, I'm all for it. But she is so quickly swayed by these arguments when she doesn't even know. This is the point that I'm making here. She doesn't know that there's a whole other side to the church history that would easily refute a lot of these flimsy claims
Come on.
about Catholicism. It's just not true. Gavin Ortland, and there's a guy, if anyone's interested, and I will say this, Gavin Ortland, he's kind of squishy, you know, from a political standpoint, but as a resource for church history, as a Protestant, he is excellent. His content is excellent. So if you're interested in this topic, you can watch a lot of Gavin Ortland's videos, and he will. And then she would have been aware, for example, if she had that interest in really exploring the issue deeply rather than just accepting everything her husband says. And again, I get the impulse, but it's just not correct. And so I kind of feel like it's unfortunate that she was already in this situation where she would be naturally pulled to one side without any meaningful resistance. And now she thinks she can throw shade at our concerts.
At our concerts. Yeah. No, I mean, you know, I feel a sadness. And, you know, part of the reason that we started speaking out was, one, because I'm bringing these things to my husband and I'm like, man, listen, I feel like there are a lot of people, there are tons and tons of people who are following Candace. And I feel like, why in particular are Protestants following her? I feel like there's enough information that we should be offended by what is being said. And what I have found is that enough people felt it, but just didn't know how to articulate it. It's like,
Right.
wait a minute, I know something is off here. I know something is wrong. But I'm like, and I think there's like a shock when people get kind of attacked that they're like, did I hear what I just thought I heard? Like, did she really mean that? And so maybe there's some benefit of the doubt being given because of her track record. And I think just bringing over people that she won over in the various, watch this, eras of her life. Okay. Because like, depending on the era that she was in, she gained a following and then she shifted and moved and all of those people came over until now they're sort of all in this one place. But she is, I think she's alienating some people. And I want to be very clear here. I want to say something because this is important to me. My intent and what you will not find on this channel is that we are trying to attack Catholics. That is not the point, not the aim at all. And I want to be very clear about that. But I am absolutely standing up to Candace Owens's attack against Protestants. And in order to do that, I've got to bring to light, bring to surface some uncomfortable doctrinal positions of the Catholic faith, the Catholic Church, that I think some people might perceive that as an attack, but it's not an attack. It's just, here is the reality. Like, we have some fundamental theological differences with the Catholic Church. Otherwise, we wouldn't be Protestants. Like, I mean, that's an obvious thing, right? So we should be able to communicate those things.
Yeah.
Right.
But I just don't want anybody to kind of like grab on to our conversation, what the three of us are talking about, and go, oh, they hate Catholics.
Yeah.
Because that couldn't be farther from the truth.
And I think if anyone out there has seen the interview we did with Dr. Jones,
Yeah.
you will see that we don't hate Catholics.
Absolutely.
It was a very cordial debate. We talked about different things. We had our disagreements, but it was just, we really wanted to hit on the fact that he and his beliefs and his claims, were really, man, just crazy against the Protestant church, and it's like, wow, how do you even come to those conclusions? And so having him on, I think it would show that, man, we want to talk about this.
Yeah.
We feel a need to discuss where you're coming from and give us the scripture.
Yeah.
Give us the word of God on those claims.
Yeah. Go ahead, Todd. What are you thinking?
I was going to say, I would even say, having watched that interview or that debate, you guys, in my opinion, were much more gracious to him than he was to you all. To be quite frank, I probably would have been a little more aggressive. I always say that as a person watching it in retrospect, but I don't in real time. I felt like maybe I think that the way you guys interacted with him, if someone came away from that thinking you guys are trying to bash Catholics, those persons are seeing what they want to see. I think that the thing that I gathered for them is just that you guys were just saying, hey, just don't bash us.
Right.
It was like, look, I understand you have your convictions. We do not agree with some of your presuppositions and your claims, but we are, Christians. So don't say that our entire movement is satanically inspired, which is something that I want to offer a few anecdotes about as well too. Sometime here.
All right, guys, our interview with Todd Shannon went way longer than we expected it to go. There was just so much to talk about. So we have decided to break that up into two parts. We don't normally have a podcast on Friday, but we will, because you'll get part 2 of our conversation with Todd Shannon regarding Candace Owens. So make sure you check that out. We had a great time with Todd, but we can't subject you to almost 2 hours of a podcast episode. Hey, if you like this video and value the content, then go ahead and like the video. You can subscribe to our channel if you want to do that as well. Feel free to comment. We try to read all of your comments and we try to respond to most of them. Of course, if there are too many, then it's hard for us to get to them. But we value interacting with you. So thank you so much for being a part of the Culture Proof community.
Also, click that notification bell. That bell will let you know when a new episode drops.
Hey, the Culture Proof Conference registration is open. Culture Proof 2026 is happening at the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter. 3 days of impactful conferencing and delightful family vacationing all rolled into one.
Yes, cultureproof.net. All information you can find there. Make sure you use the code so you can get the early bird special. Man, it's going to be a great time. And for me, it's going to be my family reunion. I love it. I look forward to the family reunion every summer. And so go to cultureproof.net to get the details about CP 2026.
Yeah, when he shows up with those leather closed-toe sandals.
Uncle Will.
Then you know Uncle Will. Uncle Will is on the scene. Don't miss out. Cultureproof.net, cultureproof.net. Click on the tab that says Culture Proof Conference 2026. You'll see who the speakers are. You'll see who's been invited. This year's theme is Living Epistle, so you know what this is going to be all about. We hope to see you there.